and she's going to start holding the Trump administration accountable. A hearing today in which Judge Zinnus extended through the holidays her order preventing the Trump administration from removing Abrego Garcia and sending him to Liberia or any other country. He's not going anywhere for the holidays, so says Judge Zinnus. But at the heart of it is her telling the Department of Justice, I don't believe you, and I'm tired of being lied to and misrepresented by you. And then there's another order that she entered off of today. She entered an order telling everybody, but I think it means the Department of Justice, and mass deportation and removal policies is all embodied in Kilmer Abrego Garcia. Every story you hear somehow touches him in some way or another. Even today, the story about 60 Minutes and Barry Weiss, affirmed by every court that's ever looked at it, up to a 9-0 United States Supreme Court, about the way that she's handling the Abrego Garcia case and trying to provide due process and justice around him. When the Trump administration illegally sent him to El Salvador and put him in a CCOT prison. He's a Venezuelan person married to an American citizen who's committed no crimes, been convicted of no crimes in any country. She ordered that his return be facilitated by the Trump administration. Trump administration said, no, go pound sand.
I need to tell you about something that just happened in federal court that should send chills down your spine, because what we're witnessing is a judge finally saying enough is enough to the Trump administration's blatant lies and manipulation of our justice system. Judge Zinnus just looked the Department of Justice dead in the eye during a hearing and essentially told them she's done being deceived, done being misled, and she's about to start holding them accountable in ways that could get very serious very quickly. This case centers around a man named Kilmer Abrego Garcia, and if you don't know his story yet, you need to understand why he's become the single most important symbol of everything that's twisted and unconstitutional about Trump's deportation machine. Every horror story you hear about this administration's immigration policies, every example of cruelty and lawlessness, it all somehow connects back to this one person. His case isn't just about one individual fighting for his rights. It's about whether federal judges still have the power to enforce the Constitution against an administration that seems to believe it answers to no one. Today's hearing was explosive. Judge Zinnus extended her order preventing the Trump administration from deporting Abrego Garcia through the holidays. He's staying put, at least for now. But what made this hearing so significant wasn't just the outcome, it was the judge's barely concealed fury at being repeatedly lied to by the very lawyers who are supposed to represent justice in her courtroom. She made it abundantly clear that she doesn't believe them anymore, that she's exhausted by their misrepresentations, and that she's prepared to take action. Then something else happened that tells you just how bad things have gotten. Judge Zinnus issued another order, and this one is remarkable. She's now prohibiting anyone from bringing cell phones, cameras, recording devices, smart watches, smart pens, or smart glasses into her courtroom. Think about what that means. Federal judges don't issue orders like this out of nowhere. They do it because someone violated the rules, because someone was caught doing something they shouldn't have been doing. And given the context of this case and who the parties are, it's pretty clear who she's worried about: the Department of Justice itself. Let me give you the background on Abrego Garcia, because his story is absolutely enraging. He's a Venezuelan man married to an American citizen. He has committed no crimes. He's been convicted of nothing in any country. But the Trump administration illegally sent him to El Salvador and threw him into a notorious torture prison called CCOT. And I want you to understand what CCOT is, because there was supposed to be a 60 Minutes investigation about this prison that would have exposed the brutal conditions there. But CBS News, under its cowardly leadership, killed that story because the Trump administration didn't want its feelings hurt. They didn't want America to see what they were enabling. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. Abrego Garcia was tortured almost immediately upon arrival at CCOT. This is an innocent man, someone who had every right to be in the United States through his marriage, someone who hadn't broken any laws, and the Trump administration shipped him off to be tortured in a foreign prison. When Judge Zinnus found out what happened, she ordered his return. The administration refused. They told her to go pound sand, so his lawyers took it to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, twice. Both times, the appeals court sided with Judge Zinnus and ordered Abrego Garcia brought back. The Trump administration still refused. So the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And here's what should terrify you. Even this Supreme Court, this MAGA-dominated 6-3 conservative majority that rubber stamps most of what Trump wants, even they ruled in favor of Abrego Garcia. 9-0. Unanimous. The Supreme Court told the Trump administration to bring him back. And what did the administration do? They still didn't comply. Instead, they manufactured criminal charges against him for human trafficking based on a traffic stop that happened during the Biden administration where he didn't even get a parking ticket. Let that sink in. The Trump administration defied every level of the federal judiciary, including a unanimous Supreme Court decision. And when they were finally forced to bring Abrego Garcia back, they did it by turning him into a criminal defendant on completely fabricated charges. This is vindictive prosecution in its purest form. It's retaliation for daring to assert constitutional rights. It's punishment for forcing the administration to follow the law. And there's another federal judge, Judge Crenshaw in Tennessee, who's handling that bogus criminal case and appears to be on the verge of dismissing the entire indictment because he recognizes it for what it is: payback. Judge Crenshaw is also dealing with his own problems with the Trump administration. He issued an order telling the government to stop publicly smearing Abrego Garcia, to stop calling him a gang member and an MS-13 thug and a child sex trafficker on television. He ordered them to stop poisoning the potential jury pool and violating this man's Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial. And within the last 72 hours, Judge Crenshaw has been considering whether the government violated that order because people like Dan Bongino and Tom Homan have been all over television doing exactly what the judge told them not to do. Back to Judge Zinnus and today's hearing. During a previous hearing in mid-December, she issued a written opinion that said at least 6 government witnesses either outright lied to her or were deliberately unprepared to testify. She said they brought in the wrong people. People who didn't have access to the documents she needed to see, people who claimed not to know basic facts about the case. In her written opinion, Judge Zinnus specifically stated that this wasn't just stonewalling or incompetence. It was purposeful deception perpetrated on the court. Those are her words: purposeful deception. She also said in that December order that she would consider what to do about this misconduct at a later time. That's judge speak for contempt. When a federal judge observes witnesses lying under oath, when lawyers misrepresent facts to the court, when the government deliberately obstructs justice right in front of her, she has inherent authority to hold people in contempt. She doesn't need the other side to file a motion. She can initiate contempt proceedings on her own because she witnessed the misconduct herself. And that brings us back to today's order about electronic devices. Something happened in that courtroom. Someone got caught doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. Maybe it was recording when they shouldn't have been. Maybe it was communicating with people outside the courtroom in real time. Maybe it was something even more nefarious. But judges don't issue these kinds of blanket prohibitions unless there's been a violation. And given everything else we know about this case, given the pattern of lies and defiance and obstruction from the Department of Justice, it's not hard to figure out who the target of this order probably is. What we're seeing here is the Trump administration's open contempt for the federal judiciary. They don't just disagree with court orders, they ignore them completely. They lie to judges. They manufacture evidence. They retaliate against people who successfully assert their rights. And they do all of this while wrapped in the flag, claiming they're enforcing law and order. But what they're actually doing is dismantling the rule of law itself. Judge Zinnus extended her temporary restraining order today specifically to prevent the administration from grabbing Abrego Garcia in the middle of the night and disappearing him beyond the reach of federal courts. That's a real fear. That's not hyperbole or exaggeration. The administration has shown repeatedly that when federal judges rule against them, their strategy is to move people out of that judge's jurisdiction as quickly as possible. They want to make it physically impossible for courts to enforce their orders. That's banana republic stuff. That's how authoritarian regimes operate. The judge made it crystal clear during today's hearing. You are not picking this man up in the middle of the night. You are not sending him anywhere outside my jurisdiction. He stays put through the holidays, and you will comply with my orders. She's had enough. And based on her comments about the purposeful deception she witnessed, based on this new electronic device order, based on everything we know about how this administration operates, I believe we're about to see Judge Zinnus initiate contempt proceedings against Trump administration officials. Federal judges have real power when their orders are violated. They can issue bench warrants. They can order people arrested. They can impose fines. They can even jail people for contempt, including civil contempt where someone stays locked up until they comply with the court's order. These aren't empty threats. These are actual enforcement mechanisms that exist precisely for situations like this, where one party to a case decides that court orders don't apply to them. What makes Abrego Garcia's case so important is that it exposes the entire rotten system. This isn't about immigration policy or border security in any legitimate sense. This is about an administration that believes it can do whatever it wants, regardless of what the Constitution says, regardless of what federal courts order, regardless of how many times they lose in court. They sent an innocent man to be tortured. When ordered to bring him back, they refused. When every level of the judiciary ruled against them, they manufactured criminal charges to justify their actions retroactively. And here's what should worry everyone. If they can do this to Abrego Garcia, who has lawyers, who has federal judges fighting for his rights, who has gotten all the way to the Supreme Court and won, what are they doing to the thousands of other people who don't have that kind of legal representation? How many people have been disappeared into detention centers or deported to dangerous countries in violation of their rights, and we just don't know about it because there's no judge watching their case? The administration's strategy is clear. Overwhelm the system, defy court orders, lie to judges, and move fast enough that by the time courts can respond, it's too late. They're betting that federal judges won't actually use their contempt powers, that the consequences for defying court orders will be minimal, that they can run out the clock on any individual case while they continue their broader agenda. But Judge Zinnus is signaling that she's done playing that game. Her statements about being lied to, her extension of the restraining order, her prohibition on electronic devices, these are all signs of a judge who's preparing to drop the hammer. She's documented the lies. She's preserved the record. She's warned the government repeatedly. And now she's reaching the point where she's going to have to act. Because if she doesn't, if she lets this defiance continue without consequences, then what's the point of having courts at all? The electronic device order is particularly telling. Federal courtrooms are supposed to be places where the truth comes out, where evidence is presented fairly, where procedures are followed. If someone from the Department of Justice was using electronic devices improperly in her courtroom, if they were recording things they shouldn't have been recording, if they were communicating with people outside to coordinate their lies, that's an additional level of misconduct on top of everything else. It shows a calculated effort to manipulate the judicial process itself. Judge Crenshaw in Tennessee is dealing with similar issues. The criminal case against Abrego Garcia is a sham, manufactured to justify what the administration already did illegally. And despite the judge's explicit orders not to prejudice the potential jury pool, Trump administration officials and their media allies have been all over television calling Abrego Garcia every horrible name imaginable. They're trying to make it impossible for him to get a fair trial. They're violating his Sixth Amendment rights in real time, on camera, and they don't care because they know their base will eat it up. What we're watching is the deliberate destruction of due process. The Trump administration has decided that immigration enforcement is more important than constitutional rights, that their political agenda justifies any means necessary, that federal judges are obstacles to be worked around rather than constitutional officers to be respected, and they're doing it openly, brazenly, because they believe there will be no consequences. But here's what they might be miscalculating. Federal judges take their authority seriously. When you lie to them repeatedly, when you defy their orders, when you manufacture evidence and engage in vindictive prosecution, when you try to physically move people beyond their jurisdiction to avoid compliance, you're not just violating one person's rights. You're attacking the judiciary itself. You're saying that courts don't matter, that the rule of law is optional, that might makes right. Judge Zinnus has shown remarkable patience up to this point. She's given the administration multiple opportunities to comply. She's been affirmed at every level, including the Supreme Court. She's documented every instance of misconduct, every lie, every act of defiance. And now she's making it clear that her patience has limits. The question is, what happens next when she exercises her contempt powers? Because that appears to be where this is heading. Contempt proceedings against Trump administration officials would be explosive. It would mean lawyers from the Department of Justice potentially facing sanctions, fines, even arrest. It would mean having to explain under oath why they lied to a federal judge. It would mean the administration's entire strategy of defiance being tested in the most direct way possible. Can they really just ignore federal courts with no consequences? Are we going to enforce the rule of law or not? This case matters far beyond Abrego Garcia himself, as important as his individual rights are. This case is about whether we're a nation of laws or whether the executive branch can simply do whatever it wants when it comes to immigration. It's about whether federal courts have real power to check executive overreach or whether judicial orders are just suggestions to be ignored whenever they're inconvenient. It's about whether lying to federal judges carries any penalty or whether it's just another tactic in the political playbook. The fact that even the current Supreme Court ruled 9-0 against the administration in this case shows how extreme their conduct has been. You can't get this Supreme Court to agree on anything unanimously, but they looked at what Trump's Justice Department did to Abrego Garcia and said, no, that's not legal, bring him back. And the administration's response was to defy even that ruling and manufacture criminal charges instead. That should terrify everyone regardless of political affiliation. Today, it's immigration enforcement. Tomorrow, it could be anything. If the executive branch can simply ignore unanimous Supreme Court decisions, if they can lie to federal judges without consequence, if they can torture innocent people and then prosecute them for daring to assert their rights, then none of us are safe. The Constitution becomes meaningless. Rights become privileges that can be revoked whenever the government decides you're inconvenient. Judge Zinnus is trying to hold the line. She's saying that, in her courtroom at least, the Constitution still matters. Due process still means something. You can't lie to her and expect no consequences. You can't defy her orders and escape accountability. She's extending protection to Abrego Garcia through the holidays, making sure he doesn't get disappeared in the middle of the night, documenting every instance of government misconduct for the record. But she needs backup. She needs other federal judges to show the same backbone. She needs prosecutors who aren't politically motivated to actually investigate the lies being told in federal court. She needs a legal system that functions properly instead of being weaponized for political purposes. And most importantly, she needs the American people to pay attention to what's happening, because this isn't some abstract legal dispute. This is about whether we're going to remain a country where courts can check executive power or whether we're sliding into authoritarianism. The Trump administration is testing the limits. They want to know how much they can get away with. They want to see if federal judges will actually use their contempt powers or if those powers are just theoretical. They want to know if they can create enough chaos and move fast enough that by the time courts react, it doesn't matter anymore. They're betting that most Americans won't pay attention to cases like this, that the details are too complicated, that immigration is unpopular enough that people won't care about constitutional violations as long as it looks like the administration is being tough on the border. But what happens in Abrego Garcia's case will set precedent for everything else. If the administration can get away with this level of defiance, this degree of lying to federal courts, this kind of vindictive prosecution and torture of an innocent person, then they'll know there are no limits. They'll know they can do anything they want, and the courts can't stop them. Every future case will be that much harder to win because the administration will have learned that court orders are optional. That's why Judge Zinnus's actions over the next few weeks matter so much. If she initiates contempt proceedings, if she actually starts imposing sanctions or worse on Trump administration officials, it will send a message that defying federal courts carries real consequences. It will empower other judges to do the same. It will start to rebuild the institutional checks on executive power that this administration has been systematically destroying. But if she blinks, If nothing happens despite all the documented lies and defiance, then we'll know that the rule of law is truly dead, and we're living under a different system entirely, one where power is all that matters and rights exist only as long as the government allows them to. The holiday extension of the restraining order is temporary, but it buys time. Time for these contempt issues to be resolved. Time for Judge Crenshaw to decide whether to dismiss the vindictive prosecution. Time for the legal system to actually function the way it's supposed to. But time is running out, and the Trump administration knows it. They're going to keep pushing, keep lying, keep defying, because that's their entire strategy. The only question is whether federal judges, like Judge Zinnus, are prepared to push back hard enough to make it stop. Based on what happened in today's hearing, based on her comments about being lied to, based on this electronic device order, I think we're about to find out just how far she's willing to go to defend the Constitution and her authority as a federal judge. And honestly, it's about time someone did.